Hey guys, this is the first week of our flipped blended classroom. We're going to be working on Unit 3, Elections and Voters. In class, we'll be spending time doing our mock election and focusing on that. You will have questions to answer, and I'm going to require that you watch these videos throughout the week. So the first one, the different topics we have are effective and thoughtful participation in civic life, qualifications and expansions of voting, political parties and themselves, the election process, and financial campaign and spending. And this you will be tested on all of this in Unit 3. So the first focus that we're going to be talking about today, and the main one we're going to be talking about right now, is describe the ways in which thoughtful and effective participation in civic life is characterized. So what does it mean to have our civic duties? When we ask about what are our civic duties, what did our forefathers fight for? When, of course, they gave us our rights to freedom, and they, and we fought in the Revolutionary War and the Civil War and all the wars that we fought since then. What are they fighting for? So let's go through this. First of all, what is civics? It's the study of the rights, responsibilities, and the duties of citizens. So the question is, what is a duty and what is a responsibility? By law, citizens are required to fulfill certain duties or effective of citizens. So duty specifically is a law. So question to you, what are duties? I want you to think about that. Write that down for a second and tell me, what are the things you consider a duty? Now, what's the difference between that and a responsibility? Responsibility is an obligation we have. We have an obligations to take part in, but they're not required by law. So again, a duty is something that is assigned to us by law. We have to do this. A responsibility is something that we don't have to do, but we probably should do. All right, so now that you've had some time to think about it and you've written down what is your duty and what is your responsibility, let's go into the next topic. Our duty specifically is, one, required by law. If you don't, you can be penalized. You can go to jail, such as if you don't commit some of these. So let's talk about this one. One, the U.S. requires less of its citizens than most countries, meaning we don't have that much. Men in Germany actually have to be in the military for 9 months and complete a 12 months community service. Other countries have to have served multiple years in the military. So the duties that we have in the United States are not nearly as highly required as they are in other countries. So let's talk about them. First of all, we have to obey our laws. We talked about this. In the social contract theory, we gave the government the right to do this. When we vote for our politicians, we're voting for them to make laws, and therefore to them to create laws that we now follow. But that being said, because of that, it is, by law, something we have to do. We also have to pay taxes. The government has to be funded somehow, and the only way that they can afford to create these laws and then enforce these laws is by being able to pay taxes. Defend the nation. One, every 18-year-old male must register for the draft or selective service. No females are required to at this point, though there is a push for that possibly in the future. Of course, right now we don't have a draft, but if we were to create a draft, or have a draft, we would have to do it. And that would, again, start with every 18-year-old male signing up. We also have to serve court and a jury duty. Now, this is when a lot of you roll your eyes or you don't want to do this, but for me, I want somebody in that jury who's my peer. I don't want a bunch of old people that think that I'm horrible. I want people my age or that understand me and what's going on, and I would hope that you'd want the same. Finally, we actually have to attend school until the age of 16. Again, these are all things that we have to. So here's my question to you. Do you feel that women should have to register for the draft? I mean, we're talking about a day and age in which women have the right to vote, just like men, and women are fighting on the forefront just in the military. So why should they not have to sign up for the draft? Just some thoughts. I want to know what you think, and we'll talk about it in class. Now, let's talk about responsibilities. Responsibilities are things that we don't have to do, but we should do. And I talked about this on one of the first days of school. And the first one is, one, we need to make an informed decision. We need to let the government know. But the biggest way we do this, and the main way we do this, is by voting. And it drives me insane when people don't vote. When you hear people say they can't stand President Obama or they don't like President Bush, yet they don't do their one civic duty they have, which is to vote. So voting. But again, understand, not just to vote, but to vote using your education, being informed, understanding what you believe in and why you believe in it, which is what what we will be working on in class as we work on our mock election. Hopefully you have a better understanding of that. And so when it comes time to vote, even if it's this election, whether it be Cruz or Trump or Hillary or Sanders, I want you to be able to make an informed decision and to do your civic responsibility. So what are the qualifications? Are you eligible to vote? First of all, you must be a U.S. citizen. No, you don't have to be born here, but you can be a legal U.S. citizen. So if you've applied for residency and you've become a U.S. citizen, you're allowed to. However, some states, foreign board, and actually, so in every state, you're allowed to vote, as long as you're a U.S. citizen. You must be a legal resident in which you are. Now, let's say you moved. If you move, you have to wait until their criteria. And every state's different. Some states it's 6 months, some states it's right away. But they all have a waiting period of some sort, so that way you can't just go from state to state voting illegally. And finally, you must be the age of 18. Now, that hasn't always been that way, but we'll discuss that here in just a minute. Now, let's talk about what we've had in the past. We have not always been the most user-friendly voting history, have we? Literacy tests have been made. Of course, mainly this was made to stop who? As you've all probably guessed, it was there to stop minorities and specifically slaves who were, or blacks who were no longer slaves anymore, and now they are voting citizens. But in order to do this, we had Jim Crow laws, and one of them were literacy tests. Basically, they had to be able to prove you had the ability to do this. And of course, these tests were not always the same. They would, a couple of different things. One, they would grandfather people in who had already been voting or had ancestors that voted, or their test would not be nearly as hard. Then they would ask questions of those of African Americans that were extremely hard, such as name every representative in the state of Georgia. I can't do that, and I don't think any of us could as well. They also had poll taxes. Again, doing the same thing, ways to stop people from voting. And these were just payments, and they knew that, again, many people of African American persuasion could not afford this, and therefore would not be able to do this. So, what changed this? First of all, we have the 15th Amendment. The 15th Amendment gave African Americans the right to vote, but it did not stop those poll tax literacy tests. It wasn't until the Voting Rights Act of 1965, as you all might remember, which was Martin Luther King led the march in Selma. He did this to get the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965, and eventually it did finally suspend literacy tests and poll taxes, now officially granting everybody a chance the right to vote. Suffrage for women came before this in 1920. It gave women all the right to vote. We might remember the suffragettes who were constantly fighting for the right to vote, pushing for this. We talked about this when we watched Iron-Jawed Angels, such as and the hunger strikes they would use to do so. Finally, suffrage for teens. The 26th Amendment, which is one of the most recent ones, set the voting age at 18. The thought behind this, and this was done during the 1970s, was if we can send one of our boys to war at age of 18, how can they not have a right to vote and decide their own future for this? So because of this, this was a big push by everybody to make this change and to give people the right to actually say whether they should be in war or not. Okay, so quick questions while we wrap that up. One, what are duties that we have in the U.S. citizens and what are responsibilities? What are the differences between the two? Two, name the 3 qualifications for voting in the United States. And finally, 3, which 3 amendments expanded the right to vote in the U.S.?